I wake up in a hospital bed with my legs totally paralyzed from a spinal collapse. And the first thing the nurse tells me is that my sister signed a financial waiver and left. She was here for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. While I was in a coma. While machines kept me alive, my sister Madeline walked in, filmed a fake crying video for her fans, signed away my care, and walked out. 8 days later, she calls the hospital, acts like a crying victim, and demands they dump me at a charity clinic. The nurse, a woman named Cynthia, who had been fighting for me for a whole week, looks at the phone in total disgust and tells me the awful truth. And I felt my world shatter in that freezing, empty hospital room. My name is Abigail. I'm 28. And this is the story of how my own sister faked my death to steal millions of dollars, and how I made sure she lost it all. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It was a freezing Tuesday in November. I was standing in the middle of a massive construction site for Maplewood's new city library. I was a junior architect, and this project was my entire life. I had been working 80-hour weeks, ignoring the terrible sharp pains shooting down my back. I thought it was just stress. I was wrong. I was pointing at a set of blueprints when my vision suddenly blurred into dark, fuzzy spots. A cold sweat soaked through my shirt. My hands started to shake violently. I tried to take a step forward, but my legs completely gave out. I hit the raw concrete floor hard. My yellow hard hat rolled away into the dust. The shouts of the construction workers faded into a high-pitched ringing, and the world went completely black. I didn't wake up 26 hours later. I woke up 8 days later. The room was painfully bright. There were no ceiling tiles to count, just a harsh fluorescent light blinding me. I tried to sit up, but my entire lower body felt like it was trapped in heavy cement. Panic gripped my throat. I couldn't move my legs. A nurse pushed through the door. Her name tag read Cynthia Becker, RN. She checked my monitors, her face pale and serious. "Where am I?" I whispered. My throat felt like sandpaper. "Why can't I move?" Cynthia sighed, her shoulders dropping. "You had a severe spinal collapse caused by a rare nerve disease. You've been in a medically induced coma for over a week, Abigail." I stared at her, the words not making sense. "Am I going to be okay? The doctors say you need a specialized spinal surgery and at least 3 years of intense physical therapy. The estimated cost is around $450,000. She paused, and I saw a deep sadness in her eyes. But that isn't the hardest news. I looked around the empty room. There were no balloons, no cards, no worried parents holding my hand. "Where is my family?" Cynthia bit her lip. "Your sister Madeline came in on the second day, but she didn't come in to hold your hand. She set up a ring light in the hallway. She filmed a video of herself crying. Then she walked into the billing department, legally signed away any financial responsibility for you, and told them to discharge you to a state-run charity clinic as soon as you woke up." My heart stopped. Madeline? Growing up, Madeline was the center of attention, and I was just the background noise. Our father Gordon was a failed businessman who drowned his regrets in cheap wine. Our mother Penelope just agreed with whoever yelled the loudest. Madeline was the golden child. She was now a local social media influencer and boutique owner. She lived for likes, comments, and fake internet sympathy. I remembered what our grandmother Florence told me before she passed away. She used to brush my hair, her hands warm and gentle. She would tell me stories about her younger sister, Great-Aunt Grace, who moved overseas to Tokyo and built a massive billion-dollar software company from nothing. Grandma Florence used to say, "Abigail, your sister loves the applause of a crowd, but you and Grace, you love the actual hard work. Don't let Madeline's shadows cover your light." I didn't fully understand it then. I did now. My hands trembled as I reached for the hospital phone beside my bed. I dialed my father's number. He answered on the 4th ring. There was loud, tropical music playing in the background. "Dad?" I choked out. "I'm awake. The doctors say I'm paralyzed right now. I need help." "Oh, Abigail," Gordon said, his voice annoyed. The clinking of a cocktail glass loud in my ear. "Madeline is handling the PR for this. You know we can't afford your medical bills. It would ruin us. Madeline bought your mother and me tickets for a luxury cruise to help us cope with the grief. We are boarding the ship right now." "Grief?" I asked, tears finally spilling hot down my cheeks. "Dad, I'm alive. I'm broke and I'm being kicked out of the hospital. Stop being so dramatic, Abigail. Just listen to your sister." Click. The line went dead. I dropped the phone. The silence in the room was crushing. They were abandoning me. Because I was sick, because I was expensive, they were simply throwing me away. That afternoon, the door opened. It wasn't my family, it was Derek. Derek wasn't a mechanic anymore. He was a brilliant IT specialist who used to work at my architectural firm. We were good friends, the kind who shared coffee in the break room. He looked terrified as he walked in, gripping his tablet tightly. He didn't bring a bag of donuts. He pulled a chair close to my bed and leaned in, his face pale. "Abigail, I came as soon as I found out what room you were in," he whispered, looking over his shoulder. "Derek, my family left me. I have no money for the surgery," I sobbed, the emotional weight breaking me in half. "Abigail, it's worse than that," Derek said, his voice shaking. "I need to show you what your sister has been doing online for the past 5 days. He unlocked his tablet and turned the screen toward me. The floor seemed to fall out from beneath my hospital bed. Derek leaned closer, the glow from his tablet lighting up the dark bags under his eyes. "Madeline didn't just leave you here," he whispered, his voice cracking like dry wood. "She told the whole world you passed away." My breath hitched in my throat. I stared at the screen. The room felt like it was spinning in tight, sickening circles. It was a massive online crowdfunding page. Right at the top was a black and white picture of me smiling at my college graduation. The bold letters underneath read, "In loving memory of my sweet sister, Abigail, gone too soon." My eyes dragged down to the bright green number below it. The donations had already reached $320,000. "That's not possible," I choked out, my chest feeling tight. "I'm right here, I'm breathing." She used her massive online following, Derek explained, wiping a drop of sweat from his forehead. She posted a heavily edited video crying in her car, saying the nerve disease stopped your heart peacefully in the night. She told everyone the money is for a memorial and to support the family. It went completely viral. Who had access to my social media accounts to freeze them? I realized with a sick drop in my stomach that Madeline had borrowed my phone just days before my collapse to send a picture. She had locked me out of my own digital life. Derek looked at me with deep pity, and I knew he wasn't just worried about the fake page. He was terrified of what Madeline was capable of. Day 5 of being trapped in this bed. My cell phone vibrated on the small plastic table. Madeline's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for 3 long rings, my heart hammering against my ribs before I finally managed to tap the answer button with my weak fingers. "Abigail, oh my gosh, I am so busy right now." Her voice was fast and chirpy. It was the upbeat voice of a woman picking out shoes, not a woman mourning her dead sister. "How is the charity clinic?" "I'm still at the main hospital. I can't move my legs, Madeline." I know. Mom told me the doctors are just running tests." She brushed it off easily. "Listen, I need your master passwords for your architectural cloud drive. Your boss called, and they need to clear out your digital workspace so they can hire your replacement." I stayed totally quiet. A cold realization washed over my skin. Planning. She wasn't planning a funeral. She wanted my blueprints. The city library project was worth millions. If she got into my drive, she could easily sell my secret, unfinished designs to Bradley Weston, the shady rival developer she had been dating. That's how she was going to get even more money. "I don't remember my passwords right now," I lied smoothly. "Well, try to remember. It's super important," she snapped. "Oh, and don't worry about your apartment rent. I talked to your landlord and sorted it all out." Sorted? She meant she told him I was dead and gave up my apartment. "Thanks, Madeline. Of course, love you." She hung up. I sat there staring at the blank wall. For the first time since my collapse, a blazing hot anger replaced my fear. Derek was right. Madeline wasn't just abandoning me, she was actively erasing my existence. That afternoon, a woman I had never met walked into my room. She wore a sharp dark blue suit and carried a thick leather briefcase. She had the kind of strict, serious face that made you want to sit up perfectly straight. "Abigail Sutton. I am Heather Anderson. I am the senior fraud investigator for your bank." She pulled up a chair and opened a thick folder. "I am here because your entire life savings, $45,000, was transferred out of your account the exact morning you collapsed." The heart monitor beside me started to beep faster. "How?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "When you started your intense new job 2 years ago, you signed a medical and financial power of attorney, naming your sister as your backup in case of emergencies." Heather pulled out a copy of the document. "Most family members use this to pay for hospital care. Your sister used it to empty your accounts completely. You currently have $0 to your name." The room went dead silent. She is telling people I'm dead, and she is taking everything, I whispered. Heather looked me straight in the eyes. In my 20 years of banking, I have seen greedy families, but I have never seen someone try to financially bury their sibling while they are still breathing. You have to fight back, Abigail. Let me help you. That evening, I begged the nurse to let me use the landline to call the cruise ship my parents were on. I finally got through to their cabin. I told my mother everything Heather and Derek told me. The fake GoFundMe, the stolen life savings, the stolen apartment. I tried to keep my voice from shaking. I just laid out the cold, hard facts. Mom, please, you have to make the boat turn around. You have to come to the hospital. She stole everything from me. Only silence echoed through the line. Then Penelope Sutton did what she always did. She believed the easiest lie. Madeline said you had a total mental breakdown because of work stress, Abigail, my mother said softly. She said you ran away to a wellness retreat, and that the GoFundMe is just to pay off the massive secret debts you left behind. She said we needed this vacation to heal. Mom, I am paralyzed in a hospital bed. Have you even tried to call my doctors? More silence. Then my father grabbed the phone. I could hear the ocean wind in the background. Abigail, your sister bought us the VIP package. Stop trying to ruin this for us with your wild stories. You are stressing your mother out, and I am missing the midnight buffet. I closed my eyes, tears hot and bitter. Dad, Madeline literally stole my life savings. Come on, Abigail, that's crazy talk. You probably just mismanaged your money. You were always too obsessed with those stupid building drawings anyway. He didn't care. He was never going to care. I heard him take a loud sip of his drink. Goodbye, Dad, I whispered. I hung up the phone and let it fall onto my chest. I didn't cry anymore. The tears had completely dried up, leaving a hollow, burning, empty space inside me. Cynthia, the kind nurse, walked into my room a few minutes later. She didn't check my monitors this time. She just stood at the foot of my bed, her hands gripping the plastic rail so tightly her knuckles turned white. I am so sorry, Abigail, she whispered, her voice shaking. I tried to fight the hospital administration, but your sister was ruthless. She used her power of attorney to cancel your premium health insurance an hour ago. She claimed you were moving out of state. The hospital can't keep you here for free. At 2 a.m. in the freezing, pouring rain, I was loaded into a bumpy ambulance like unwanted cargo. I wasn't going to a cozy safe house in the country. I was taken to the St. Jude Charity Clinic on the worst side of town. The walls were covered in peeling green paint. The air smelled like cheap bleach and old soup, and the constant groans of sick people echoed down the dark hallways. I was placed in a crowded ward with 4 other beds. The mattress was paper thin. I stared at the cracked ceiling, the loud rattling of the old heater filling my ears, and I finally understood how little my family valued my life. The next morning, my new reality hit me like a train. A gruff physical therapist came in to start my rehabilitation. It was the most humiliating, agonizing hour of my life. Because my legs were paralyzed, they had to use a heavy canvas sling to hoist me into a wheelchair. My spine screamed in hot, blinding agony. Sweat dripped into my eyes. I felt entirely helpless, like a broken puppet with cut strings. But as I sat slumped in that cheap wheelchair, gripping the armrests with my weak hands, a sudden, fierce spark ignited in my chest. I was an architect. I built massive, impossible things out of nothing. My legs might be useless right now, but my brain was sharp. If Madeline wanted a war, she was going to get one. I just needed to build a different kind of weapon. 2 days later, Derek sneaked into the charity clinic during visiting hours. He looked out of breath, carrying a heavy backpack. He pulled the privacy curtain around my bed and pulled out a burner cell phone and his thick black laptop. I've been working with Heather, that bank fraud investigator, Derek whispered rapidly, his eyes wide. We tracked Madeline's digital footprint. Abigail, she isn't just trying to sell your city library blueprints to her boyfriend Bradley Weston. She listed your entire hard drive on a dark web auction site for shady overseas developers. My blood ran completely cold. She's selling my life's work to the highest bidder? Yes, Derek typed furiously on his keyboard. But it's not just the designs they want, Abigail. I decrypted a hidden file on your drive. You documented a massive underground structural flaw, a giant sinkhole right under the library site. If that gets built, Bradley Weston's billion-dollar luxury apartments next door will completely collapse. They aren't buying your blueprints to build them. They are buying them to destroy the evidence. The auction ends in exactly 3 weeks. She's going to make millions off your genius. And because everyone thinks you are dead, no one will ever know those designs belonged to you. I closed my eyes, the metallic smell of the clinic suddenly making me nauseous. My own sister was stripping me down to the bone and selling the pieces. Just then, a tired-looking clinic volunteer peeked through the curtain, holding a small stack of mail. "Abigail Sutton? Someone dropped this off at the front desk for you." I frowned, taking the letters. Most were standard clinic junk mail, but one envelope stopped my heart. It was made of thick, expensive cream parchment. On the back was a heavy gold wax seal, stamped with the image of a flying crane. The postage mark in the corner read, "Tokyo, Japan." My hands trembled as I cracked the wax seal. Inside was a single piece of paper with elegant, old-fashioned handwriting. "A strong building survives the earthquake. A strong woman survives her family. Rest, child. Help is coming. G." I gasped, my thumb running over the thick black ink. "G. Great Aunt Grace." My mind flashed back to my Grandma Florence brushing my hair. She used to tell me about Grace, the fierce, brilliant sister who refused to be pushed around by their cruel parents and ran away to Tokyo with nothing but a suitcase and a brilliant mind. Grace had built a billion-dollar tech empire. She was a ghost, a legend in our family who hadn't spoken to my parents in 40 years because she hated their greed. She knows, I realized. A warm, bright wave of hope washing over my shivering body. Somehow she knows I am alive. Derek looked up from his screen, interrupting my thoughts. His face was grim. "Abigail, look at this." He turned the laptop toward me. Madeline had just posted a massive, glossy digital flyer on her social media. She is hosting the Abigail Sutton Memorial Charity Banquet at the Grand Plaza Hotel in 3 weeks. Derek read aloud, his voice dripping with disgust. "It's a red carpet event. She's inviting the mayor, big tech CEOs, and heavy-hitting investors. She says she is going to collect a final massive donation check to build a memorial statue in your honor." I stared at the glowing screen. Madeline in a black designer dress, fake tears in her eyes. The banquet was scheduled for the exact same night her dark web auction ended. She was going to use the party as a cover to finalize the illegal sale of my blueprints while collecting millions in fake charity money. I looked down at the gold-sealed letter from Tokyo in my lap. I didn't feel broken anymore. The fear was gone, replaced by an icy, calculated focus. "Derek," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "get Heather on the phone. We are going to that banquet." 2 agonizing days passed in the smelly, crowded charity ward before someone finally slipped through the rusty clinic doors. It wasn't a doctor, it was my younger cousin Tiffany. She was a junior bank teller who worked in the same building as Heather, and she was the only family member who never bought into Madeline's fake perfection. Tiffany's eyes were wide with pure panic as she pulled the privacy curtain shut around my thin, lumpy mattress. She was shaking from head to toe. "Abigail." I sneaked a look at the files on Heather's desk, she whispered, her voice cracking like dry glass. "Madeline isn't just taking your GoFundMe money. She filed an official legal death certificate with the city this morning. She is trying to cash in your $500,000 corporate life insurance policy." The cold reality hit me like a bucket of freezing ice water. To the world, I was a tragic memory. To my sister, I was a massive, walking payday. Tiffany pulled out her phone, her hands trembling. "That's not all. Look at her live stream right now." She pressed play. Madeline was standing in my apartment. She was wearing a perfectly tailored black morning dress, her makeup done to look flawlessly sad. "Hey guys," Madeline said to the camera, wiping a fake tear away. "I'm auctioning off my poor sister's beloved drafting table and her handmade architectural models today. All proceeds go to her memorial fund." I watched, sick to my stomach, as strangers commented with crying emojis and bid thousands of dollars on the tiny wooden models I had spent years building by hand. She was erasing my entire existence and selling the scraps to her followers. "Wait," Derek said, freezing the video on his laptop. "Look at the background." He zoomed in on a man standing in the shadows of my apartment, just off camera. It was Bradley Weston. The microphone picked up his faint whisper to Madeline, "Make sure your dead sister didn't leave any backup drives. If those blueprints leak, the whole city council goes down." "I'm going to ruin her," I whispered, my fingernails digging deeply into the thin hospital bedsheets. The next afternoon, Heather sneaked into the clinic through the dirty delivery entrance. She didn't bring a burly private investigator. She brought a skinny, nervous cybersecurity hacker named Jax. He set up a messy tangle of wires and a heavy glowing laptop right on my plastic meal tray. Jax traced the dark web auction where your library blueprints are being sold, Heather explained, her face deadly serious. Jax hit a button, and lines of green code filled the screen. The IP address selling your life's work isn't some secret overseas hacker, Jax said, his eyes darting around the room. It traces directly back to the private Wi-Fi network inside Madeline's fancy clothing boutique downtown. There it was. The absolute, undeniable proof. She wasn't just a terrible sister who liked attention. She was a massive cyber criminal. The $450,000 I needed for my spinal surgery had felt impossible. But watching Madeline steal millions of dollars of my hard work made my blood boil hotter than my physical pain. I am going to pause here for a second. If you are watching this, take a good hard look at the people you call family. Sometimes the deepest, most painful cuts don't come from enemies. They come from the people sitting next to you at Thanksgiving dinner. Hit subscribe if you want to see how I crash a party I'm supposed to be dead for. And drop a comment. What would you do if your own sibling tried to sell your life to the highest bidder? Things accelerated at a terrifying speed after that. I was trapped in a broken body, but I absolutely refused to stay helpless. That night, the clinic ward was deadly silent. Suddenly, a massive, sleek black delivery van pulled up outside the glowing emergency room window. A tall man in a sharp black suit stepped out of the rain. He didn't speak to the tired nurses at the desk. He simply rolled a large, heavy object covered in a black sheet straight into my ward, placed a silver envelope on my bed, and walked right back out into the dark shadows. With shaking fingers, I tore open the envelope. It was the same heavy cream parchment, the same thick gold wax seal of the flying crane. You cannot fight a war from a broken bed. Rise, G. Derek, who had been sleeping in the hard plastic visitor's chair, jumped up and pulled the cover off the object. It was a high-tech, ultra-light motorized wheelchair. It looked incredibly expensive, like it belonged on a spaceship, custom-built to support my exact spinal injury. For the first time in weeks, a real, genuine smile spread across my tired face. I pressed the sleek joystick, and the chair hummed to life instantly. I wasn't trapped anymore. Great Aunt Grace was leveling the playing field, piece by piece. Jax, our nervous cybersecurity hacker, didn't sleep for 2 whole days. His fingers flew across his keyboard, his eyes glued to the glowing green code in the dark clinic room. He was digging deep into the secret messages between my sister and her dark web buyer. "Abigail, you need to see this," Jax whispered, his voice trembling as he pointed to the screen. "The overseas developer buying your library blueprints doesn't trust a digital download. These designs are worth too much. The buyer is flying a representative into town." Madeline agreed to hand over the files on a physical, encrypted flash drive. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. "When?" I asked. "During the VIP cocktail hour at your fake memorial banquet," Jax said, shaking his head in disbelief. "She is going to use the loud music and the crying crowd as a distraction to secretly pass the flash drive. The second she hands it over, $2.5 million in untraceable cryptocurrency will drop into her offshore account. That was her master plan. A fake funeral to steal real millions." But my quiet anger suddenly turned into pure, ice-cold terror the very next morning. I was practicing moving my new, high-tech wheelchair down the empty clinic hallway. The wheels hummed silently. Suddenly, the heavy glass doors of the clinic swung open. A massive, terrifying man in a cheap leather jacket walked in. He had a jagged scar across his chin and eyes like dead black stones. He marched straight to the front desk and slammed a thick envelope of cash on the counter. "I need to see the morgue transfer papers for Abigail Sutton." His voice was a low, dangerous growl. "My boss needs absolute proof the architect is actually dead before we finalize our business." My breath completely stopped. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. The buyer wasn't just a shady businessman. He was dangerous and he was doing his homework. If he found out I was sitting in a wheelchair 30 feet away, I wouldn't just be a secret anymore. I would be a loose end. I threw the wheelchair into reverse. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely grip the joystick. I didn't just hide in a closet. I spun the chair around and gunned the motor down the steep, narrow ramp toward the laundry exit. I heard the scarred man's heavy boots sprinting after me. "Hey, stop!" he yelled, his footsteps echoing like gunshots. My chair tires squealed on the wet linoleum. I crashed through the double metal doors just as his hand grazed the back of my seat. I sat in the pitch-black darkness of the alley, surrounded by the strong smell of bleach and dusty mops, listening to the heavy thud, thud, thud of his boots pacing the floor above. "The county already took the body," the frightened receptionist squeaked. We don't have her here. Leave before I call the police. The man grunted, turning around. Tell her sister to make sure the files are ready for the party. The clinic doors slammed shut. I sat in the dark alley for an hour, tears of pure terror stinging my eyes. I wasn't just fighting for my stolen money anymore. I was fighting for my actual life. That evening, the situation shifted again. A different man wearing a sharp gray courier suit walked into the clinic ward. He didn't say a single word. He just handed me a small, heavy black velvet box and walked away into the night. I opened the box. Inside was a sleek silver compact makeup mirror. But when I popped it open, there was no glass inside. It was a complex, glowing green circuit board with a single red button. Beneath it was a tiny note written on thick cream parchment. Cut their strings. Silence their lies. G. Derek's jaw dropped when he saw it. Abigail, that's a military-grade digital signal jammer, he gasped, examining the device. Your great-aunt Grace didn't just send you a toy. If you press that button, it will instantly shut down every Wi-Fi network, cell signal, and Bluetooth device within a 500-foot radius. A fierce, burning smile spread across my face. Madeline needed internet access to verify her massive cryptocurrency payment. She needed the Wi-Fi to finish her illegal deal. Great-aunt Grace had just handed me the exact weapon I needed to freeze my sister's trap right as it snapped shut. But the charity clinic was no longer safe. The scarred man knew where I had been admitted. If he came back and checked the patient logs, I was doomed. At 3 a.m., under the cover of a massive thunderstorm, Derek and I executed our escape. But before we left the hospital grounds, I saw a familiar silver luxury sports car parked in the VIP doctor's lot. Dr. Aris. I steered my wheelchair right in front of his headlights as he tried to leave. I tapped on his window. He rolled it down, his face turning ghost white when he saw me alive. I held up Derek's laptop, showing a live feed of Dr. Aris accepting dark web crypto payments from Madeline. You kept me paralyzed for cash, I said, my voice like venom. You are going to testify against my sister or I hit send to the medical board right now. He frantically nodded, sweating through his expensive suit. One enemy down. We didn't go to my parents' house. We didn't go to a friend's apartment. Derek drove his rusty IT van to an abandoned dusty server room in the basement of an old office building. He had spent the last 2 days secretly hooking up high-speed internet cables, setting up glowing monitors, and pushing an old cot into the corner. It smelled like stale air and copper wire, but it was completely off the grid. Nobody knew I was here. This is our war room, Derek said, wiping the rain from his glasses. He locked the heavy metal door behind us. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like a broken victim. I sat in my spaceship-like wheelchair, holding the silver jammer in my lap, surrounded by humming computer screens. My spine still ached, and my legs were completely numb, but my mind had never been sharper. 14 days. We had exactly 14 days until Madeline stood on a glittering stage in a black dress, pretending to mourn me while stealing my legacy. I looked at the glowing green code on Jax's laptop. Derek, I said, my voice finally steady and strong. Let's build her a nightmare. The underground server room became my entire world for the next few days. It was cold, smelling strongly of old dust and humming electronics. While my legs remained completely numb in my high-tech wheelchair, my brain was running 1,000,000 miles an hour. Tiffany sneaked away from her bank teller job on her lunch break to visit our secret hideout. She brought cheap sandwiches and a heart full of nervous energy. She dropped a heavy brown folder onto my lap. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost spilled her coffee. Madeline didn't just steal your money, Abigail, Tiffany whispered, her eyes wide with shock. I found this in the bank's secure legal files. Madeline forged your signature on an intellectual property deed. She legally transferred the rights of the city library blueprints to her own name 2 days before you collapsed. She planned this even before you got sick. I opened the folder. There it was. My name, scribbled in blue ink, but the handwriting was too perfectly looped. It was Madeline's exact handwriting. She hadn't just taken advantage of a tragedy. She had been preparing to steal my life's work while I was still healthy. The betrayal stung like a physical slap across the face. But it's worse than that, Jax interrupted, pulling up a deeply buried financial ledger on the big screen. I hacked Gordon's accounts. Your father didn't just abandon you for a cruise. He owed $200,000 in illegal gambling debts to the Shadow Brokers Syndicate. Madeline didn't just sell your blueprints. She traded your life to pay off his debt. That luxury cruise wasn't a vacation. It was a payoff for keeping their mouths shut. The floor vanished from under me. My own parents sold me to the mob for a boat ride. And look what she is doing right now, Tiffany said, pulling out her phone and opening a live stream video. I watched the screen, my blood turning to absolute ice. Madeline was standing at the exact construction site where I had collapsed. She was wearing a bright yellow hard hat over her perfectly styled hair. Behind her, the massive steel beams of the unfinished library reached into the cloudy sky. This was my sweet sister's dream, Madeline sobbed to the camera, wiping away fake tears that didn't ruin her makeup. Abigail put her heart into this concrete, and tonight, at the memorial banquet, we will raise enough money to make sure her genius is never forgotten. The comments rolled in like a massive wave. You are so strong, and sending prayers, and donated $500. She was standing on the exact spot where my spine gave out, using my pain to fill her pockets. I handed the phone back to Tiffany. I didn't cry. She wants to put on a show, I said quietly, gripping the sleek joystick of my wheelchair. So, we are going to give her a show she will never ever forget. But there was a massive problem. Madeline can't just hand over a simple flash drive, Derek said, pacing the floor. Your blueprints are heavily encrypted on the firm's main server. Madeline needs the physical master decryption key to unlock the files for the buyer. It's locked in the server room inside our old architectural firm. If she gets it tomorrow morning, the files are theirs forever. I looked at my wheelchair. I looked at Derek. Then we get it tonight. At 2 a.m., Derek wheeled me through the dark, silent parking lot of my old firm. Jax hacked the electronic door lock from the van. The heavy glass doors slid open. My chair hummed silently over the plush carpet. We dodged 2 flashlight beams from the night security guards, hiding behind my own old drafting desk. My heart hammered in my throat. We reached the server room. Derek smashed the glass casing, yanked out the heavy metal decryption drive, and dropped it into my lap just as the alarm sirens started screaming. We flew out the back doors into the rainy night. Madeline's master key was mine. That evening, we didn't meet in a quiet diner to plan a polite, private confrontation. We planned a massive digital ambush. Jax and Derek sat in front of a wall of glowing computer screens in our dusty basement. Jax's fingers flew across the keyboard with lightning speed. The Grand Plaza Hotel uses a central smart system for their grand ballroom, Jax explained, a wicked grin spreading across his face. Madeline rented their massive cinematic projector to show a slideshow of your childhood photos during the banquet, but I just hacked their network firewall. When she clicks play, she isn't going to see a sweet slideshow. We control the screens now. Derek held up a thick black cable. And we control the audio. Abigail, you can broadcast whatever you want into that room. We can trap her inside her own perfect party. I looked down at the silver compact mirror Great Aunt Grace had sent me, the military-grade signal jammer. She needs the Wi-Fi to confirm her $2.5 million cryptocurrency payment with the dark web buyer, I said, my voice cold and hard. We block the signal, we take over the screens, and we expose every single lie in front of the mayor, the investors, and her dark web buyer. But Madeline was already starting to feel the heat, even if she didn't know it was coming from me. I need to tell you what happened exactly 3 days before the banquet. I wasn't there to see it, but Heather, our brilliant fraud investigator, set the trap, and she told me every delicious detail. Madeline walked into the city records department at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. She was wearing her giant designer sunglasses, demanding the final official cremation certificate for Abigail Sutton so she could cash out my massive life insurance policy. She marched up to the front desk, expecting everyone to bow down to her tragic widow-like performance. The records director, a stern older woman who had secretly been briefed by Heather, looked up from her computer screen. She didn't offer a tissue or a sympathetic smile. "I'm sorry, Miss Sutton," the director said loudly, her voice echoing in the busy waiting room. "I cannot issue a cremation certificate. The Federal Bank Fraud Division has completely frozen Abigail Sutton's medical and death records. Your sister's file is under an active criminal investigation for stolen intellectual property." Madeline's perfect mask completely shattered. According to Heather, who was watching from the security cameras, Madeline's face turned the color of spoiled milk. Her hands started trembling so violently she dropped her expensive leather purse on the linoleum floor. For the first time in her life, she couldn't charm her way out of the problem. What do you mean, criminal investigation?" Madeline stammered, her voice squeaking with genuine terror. "She's dead. Who is investigating?" "I cannot give you any more information," the director said coldly. "But the authorities are very interested in a dark web server linked to your downtown boutique. Have a nice day. Madeline turned around and basically ran out of the building, her heels slipping on the floor. She was hyperventilating, realizing that her perfect invisible crime was leaving a massive glowing trail. She didn't know I was alive, but she knew the walls were rapidly closing in. She had no choice now. She had to finish the illegal blueprint sale at the banquet, grab the $2.5 million and flee the country before the police kicked her door down. I sat in my dark server room, staring at the glowing monitors. My sister was a cornered animal, and the memorial banquet was her final, desperate attempt to escape. "Are you ready for this, Abigail?" Derek asked softly, placing a hand on my shoulder. I looked at the silver jammer, then at the lines of hacked code on the screen. "I'm not just ready," I whispered, the fire in my chest burning brighter than ever. "I'm going to bring the whole building down on her." Madeline's life was unraveling at a spectacular speed, and we were watching every single second of it from our underground server room. Jax had successfully cloned Madeline's encrypted messaging app. That evening, while eating cold pizza, we watched her desperately typing messages to her dark web buyer. "We have to do the flash drive handoff earlier," Madeline typed, the digital text appearing on our giant monitor. "The city records office is asking questions. Meet me by the ice sculpture exactly at 8:15 p.m., right before my memorial speech. Bring the crypto transfer codes." The buyer, using the username shadow_broker, simply replied, "If this is a trap, you will not live to spend a single penny." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, but I didn't back down. My sister was inviting a violent criminal to a crowded ballroom just to steal my architectural blueprints. She didn't care who got hurt, as long as she got her money. The night before the banquet, the dusty server room was completely silent except for the low hum of the cooling fans. Derek and Jax were asleep on the floor. I sat in my high-tech wheelchair, staring at the silver signal jammer in my lap. I thought about Great Aunt Grace. I had never actually met her. I only knew the stories Grandma Florence told me. I wondered why a billionaire in Tokyo cared so much about a paralyzed junior architect in Maplewood. Suddenly, Jax's main laptop screen blinked bright blue. A secure encrypted video call was overriding our system. Jax jumped up, wiping sleep from his eyes. "Whoa, nobody should be able to bypass my firewall," he panicked. The screen flickered and an older woman appeared. She had sharp, icy blue eyes, pure white hair pulled into a tight knot, and she was wearing a flawless silk kimono. Even through the screen, her authority was so heavy it practically sucked the air out of the room. "Hello, Abigail," the woman said. Her voice was crisp, elegant, and commanded absolute respect. "I am your Great Aunt Grace." My breath caught in my throat. You sent the wheelchair. And the jammer." "I sent you the tools to survive," Grace said, her eyes softening just a fraction. "Florence always told me you had the true architect spirit. You build things that last. Your sister only knows how to tear things down for cheap applause. I have watched from afar for a long time, waiting to see if you would fight back when the wolves came." "They took everything from me," I whispered, gripping the armrests of my chair. Grace offered a small, dangerous smile. "Not everything. I made a phone call this morning, Abigail. I just purchased the entire architectural firm you worked for. You are no longer a junior employee. You are the senior partner. Now go to that banquet tomorrow and burn your sister's fake stage to the ground." The screen went black. Derek, Jax, and I just stared at each other in stunned silence. I wasn't just fighting for my stolen money anymore. I was walking into that banquet as the boss. The next evening, the Grand Plaza Hotel looked like a glittering palace. 150 of the city's wealthiest people, tech CEOs, and local politicians were arriving in expensive tuxedos and diamond necklaces. The grand ballroom was decorated in black and gold. Waiters carried silver trays of roasted duck and champagne. I didn't walk through the front doors. At 7:30 p.m., Derek drove his rusty IT van into the hotel's underground loading dock. Using the hacked digital keycards Jax had programmed, we easily bypassed the security guards. We sneaked into the hotel's hidden service elevators. The smell of raw garbage and kitchen grease mixed with the expensive perfume filtering down through the air vents. Instead of joining the crowd, Derek pushed my silent wheelchair into the pitch-black audio-visual control booth that hung like a balcony over the entire ballroom. We had a perfect bird's-eye view of the massive stage, the giant projector screen, and the glittering crowd below. From the shadows I looked down. Madeline was standing near a massive swan ice sculpture, wearing a spectacular, sweeping black gown that probably cost more than my entire first car. She was smiling, holding a glass of champagne, and greeting the mayor with the grace of a perfect grieving sister. She looked radiant. She looked totally untouchable. But my eyes weren't on Madeline. I was scanning the crowd for the danger. Then, I saw him. The terrifying man with the jagged scar from the charity clinic. He wasn't wearing a cheap leather jacket anymore. He was dressed in a sharp, tailored tuxedo, masquerading as a wealthy foreign investor. He was standing near the shadows by the ballroom exit, his dark eyes locked intensely on Madeline. He patted his jacket pocket, a clear signal. He was ready for the handoff. My heart pounded a heavy rhythm against my ribs. "Jax," I whispered into the small earpiece Derek had given me. Jax was sitting in the van down in the alley, running the network codes. "Are we locked into the hotel's main projector?" "Locked and loaded, boss," Jax's voice crackled in my ear. "I have complete control over the giant screen behind the stage and the main speaker system. Just say the word." Down below, the string quartet stopped playing. A hush fell over the room. At exactly 8:15 p.m., Madeline checked her diamond watch. She looked nervous. She subtly nodded to the scarred man and began walking toward a private hallway near the kitchen doors to make the illegal trade. But the mayor suddenly grabbed her microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," his booming voice echoed through the ballroom, stopping Madeline in her tracks. "Before we begin the charity auction, our lovely host, Madeline Sutton, has prepared a beautiful video tribute in honor of her late brilliant sister, Abigail." Madeline froze. She looked frantically toward the private hallway, then back at the stage. The crowd burst into polite applause. She had no choice. She couldn't leave the room now without looking suspicious. She plastered on a fake, watery smile and practically glided up the stage stairs, gripping the edges of the wooden podium. "Thank you, Mayor," Madeline said, her voice shaking, but the crowd thought it was from grief. "My sister Abigail was a light in this dark world. She designed the new city library with her bare hands. When her heart stopped, mine broke into a million pieces. This video shows the beautiful soul we lost." She dramatically pointed a remote control at the massive projector screen behind her. The lights in the ballroom dimmed to pitch black. Up in the hidden balcony, I gripped the silver signal jammer in my right hand. I leaned forward in my wheelchair, a fierce, burning heat rising in my chest. "Now, Jax," I whispered, "play our movie." Madeline pressed the button on her remote control with a dramatic, sorrowful sigh. The heavy crystal chandeliers above the ballroom dimmed until the room was pitch black. 150 wealthy guests stared up at the massive 20-foot projector screen behind the stage, expecting to see a sad montage of my childhood photos. Instead, the screen crackled with sharp white static. Then a massive live video feed snapped into crystal-clear focus. It wasn't a picture of a dead girl. It was a live shot of me, sitting in my high-tech wheelchair in the dark, a /V booth, glaring straight down at the camera. A collective, massive gasp echoed through the ballroom. It sounded like all 150 people had the breath knocked out of their lungs at the exact same time. I leaned forward and spoke into my microphone. "Hello, Maplewood." My voice boomed through the massive concert speakers, shaking the floorboards. "I am Abigail Sutton. I am the senior partner of the city's largest architectural firm. And as you can plainly see, I am very much alive." Down on the stage, Madeline dropped her remote control. It hit the wooden floor with a loud smack. Her face drained of all color, turning as white as the swan ice sculpture beside her. She stared up at my giant face on the screen, her jaw hanging open in pure, unadulterated horror. "Abigail?" my mother Penelope shrieked from the front row table, knocking over her glass of water. My father Gordon just sat there frozen, his eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. "My sister told you all that my heart stopped," I continued, my voice steady and cold as ice. "She told you she needed donations for a memorial. But she wasn't planning a funeral. She was planning a bank heist." Madeline snapped out of her shock. Pure panic took over her body. She realized the entire room was turning against her. She desperately looked toward the shadows where the scarred man was standing. He was glaring at her, tapping his watch. The deal was falling apart. Madeline's hands shook violently as she yanked her gold smartphone out of her purse. She was trying to log into the dark web to force the $2.5 million cryptocurrency transfer before I could stop her. "Abigail, the transfer is initiating," Jax yelled through my earpiece, typing furiously. "The crypto payment is processing, 40%, 60%. The clock was ticking. If that money hit her account, the deal was legally done. Up in the booth, I looked down at the silver compact mirror in my lap. The gift from Great Aunt Grace. "You can't sell what doesn't belong to you, Madeline," I whispered. 90%, Jax screamed. I pressed the glowing red button on the military-grade signal jammer. Instantly, a weird, silent wave washed over the ballroom. Madeline stared at her phone. The screen flashed, no service. The mayor checked his phone. Dead. Every single Wi-Fi router, Bluetooth speaker, and cell tower within 500 feet was completely shut off. Madeline stabbed her finger at the screen, tears of absolute frustration ruining her perfect makeup. Her untraceable millions were gone. Jax, I said. Show them everything. The giant screen behind the stage shifted. My face disappeared, replaced by massive, undeniable proof. Jax projected Madeline's secret dark web auction page for everyone to read. Next came the forged intellectual property deed with my stolen signature. Then, in giant glowing letters, Jax posted the chat logs between Madeline and Shadow_broker, planning the physical drop-off of my library blueprints for tonight. The ballroom erupted into chaos. The mayor stood up, his face red with anger. Investors began whispering furiously. By the exit doors, the scarred man realized the trap had fully closed. He didn't wait around to be arrested. He pulled his tuxedo collar up, shoved past a waiter, and sprinted out the emergency exit into the rainy night, completely abandoning Madeline. Madeline was totally alone on the stage. She grabbed the microphone, her hands shaking so badly the stand rattled. "It's a fake," she screamed, her voice shrill and desperate. "It's artificial intelligence. A deep fake. My sister was crazy, she had secret enemies. Someone is trying to frame me." She played to the crowd, begging for someone, anyone, to believe her tragic performance. But the audience had the script now. From the center table, Heather Anderson stood up. She wasn't carrying a polite legal folder. She unclipped a shiny silver federal badge from her belt and held it up high. "Madeline Sutton," Heather's voice cut through the shouting crowd like a sharp knife. "I am the senior fraud investigator for the Federal Banking Commission. That is not a deepfake. That is the true owner of the blueprints you tried to steal. Your offshore accounts have been frozen, and the police have surrounded the building." Madeline looked at Heather. She looked up at the screen displaying her crimes. She looked at our parents, who were shrinking back into their chairs in total shame. She had absolutely nowhere to run. The fake charity queen was finally out of lies. The massive ballroom doors burst open, and a swarm of federal cybercrime agents flooded the room. The string quartet had long stopped playing. The only sound was the heavy thud of tactical boots on the polished wooden floor. Heather Anderson didn't just stand there. She marched right up the stage stairs. 2 large agents flanked her, holding thick, black plastic zip ties. Madeline was backed against the giant swan ice sculpture, her perfect black gown dripping with cold water as the ice slowly melted behind her. "Madeline Sutton, you are under arrest for federal wire fraud, identity theft, and the illegal sale of intellectual property," Heather said, her voice echoing perfectly through the hijacked sound system. An agent grabbed Madeline's wrists. The cold, harsh zip of the plastic ties securing her hands together was the loudest sound in the entire hotel. "You can't do this," Madeline shrieked, her fake mourning voice completely gone, replaced by the ugly raw screech of a caught criminal. "I am an influencer. I have 1 million followers. They will ruin you for this." Up in the control booth, Jax tapped a final button. "Oh, your followers are watching right now, Maddie," he whispered with a wicked grin. He had rerouted Madeline's live stream directly to the ballroom's security cameras. Millions of people watched in real time as the fake charity queen was dragged off her glittering stage in handcuffs, crying real tears for the very first time. Derek pushed my wheelchair back from the glowing control board. The adrenaline that had kept my heart racing for 2 weeks suddenly evaporated. I didn't feel like a superhero who had just saved the city. I felt incredibly heavy. I had just watched my sister's entire life burn down, and even though she built the fire herself, the smoke still stung my eyes. 2 weeks later, the dust finally began to settle. I didn't go back to the dusty underground server room. Great Aunt Grace kept her incredible promise. A sleek black luxury town car picked me up from the charity clinic and drove me directly to the massive glass skyscraper downtown where I used to work. I wasn't a junior architect in a cramped cubicle anymore. I rolled my high-tech wheelchair into the top-floor penthouse office. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. The massive mahogany desk smelled like lemon polish and fresh blueprints. On the glass door, bold gold lettering read, "Abigail Sutton and Grace Holdings, Senior Design Partner." My first official order of business was completely redesigning the new Maplewood City Library. I ripped out the massive underground sinkhole in the original plans, ensuring Bradley Weston's corrupt development would be fully exposed to the city council. I spent hours at my drafting table, expanding the hallways and adding beautiful sweeping glass ramps. I was making the entire building 100% accessible for wheelchairs. I was turning my trauma into something that would help thousands of people. Week 3 brought a massive victory for our quiet hero, Tiffany. She didn't stay a junior bank teller. Because she found the forged legal documents that cracked Madeline's entire criminal network, Heather's federal agency officially hired her. Tiffany was now a senior fraud analyst, complete with a massive corner office and a 6-figure salary. When she called me to tell me the news, she was crying so hard with joy she could barely speak. She was the family I actually chose, and she deserved every single penny. But not all family reunions are happy. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, my receptionist buzzed my desk phone. "Miss Sutton? Your parents are here to see you. They don't have an appointment." I took a deep breath. "Send them in." Gordon and Penelope walked into my massive penthouse office. They looked small. They didn't bring a warm homemade casserole. They brought a cheap wrinkled paper shopping bag. Gordon's face was red, and he kept twisting his hat in his hands. Penelope looked everywhere except at me, her cheap jewelry clinking nervously as she walked. "Abigail," Gordon started, his voice a pathetic, whiny rumble. "The federal police froze all of Madeline's accounts. They even canceled the luxury cruise she bought us. We are completely broke. We heard your Aunt Grace gave you this whole company." I sat behind my massive desk, the humming of my high-tech wheelchair the only sound in the room. They didn't ask how my spine was healing. They didn't apologize for leaving me to rot in a dirty charity ward. They came because the golden goose was in jail, and they needed a new one. Madeline stole my life savings, faked my death, and tried to sell my brain to the dark web. I said, my voice dangerously calm. "And you drank cocktails on a boat while she did it. You chose the easiest lie because it paid for your vacation." Penelope finally looked at me, tears spilling over her mascara. "We are your parents, Abigail. We didn't know how bad it was. You have to help us pay our mortgage." I pressed a silver button on my desk. The heavy oak doors swung open, and 2 burly security guards stepped inside. "I love the idea of having a real mother and father," I said, staring directly into Gordon's shocked eyes. "But I know about your $200,000 gambling debt to the shadow broker, Dad. You traded my life to save your own skin." Gordon opened his mouth to shout, but a security guard placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. My parents were marched out of my office, the heavy doors clicking firmly shut behind them. The room was perfectly quiet again. I looked out the massive glass window at the city skyline. It didn't feel like a brutal victory. It just felt like taking out the trash. A week later, the federal prosecutor called me. Madeline wasn't sending me secret handwritten apology letters. She was sitting in a high-security federal prison, absolutely furious. The prosecutor told me Madeline's lawyers tried to claim insanity, arguing she was blinded by internet fame. The judge laughed in their faces. Because of the clear digital evidence of her premeditated dark web auction, she was denied bail. She was looking at 25 years in federal prison. I hung up the phone and looked down at my hands. I thought about Madeline when we were kids, the girl who used to play dress-up in our dirty living room, pretending to be a famous movie star. She always wanted the whole world to watch her. Well, now they were. But she was behind iron bars, and the script was finally out of her control. I survived the sister who tried to bury me. Now I had an entire city to build. 8 months later, the freezing winter snow finally melted into a bright, beautifully warm spring. My recovery wasn't a magic trick. It was brutal, agonizing work. But I was no longer trapped. Every morning, I pushed through hours of intense physical therapy. By May, I could finally stand on my own 2 feet for short periods, feeling the thick, expensive plush carpet of my penthouse office beneath my toes. Derek and Jax didn't just stay my friends. Derek became the lead structural engineer for my new library project, and Jax was officially hired as my head of cybersecurity. Our terrifying days hiding in that dusty underground server room felt like a million years ago. In late May, a massive silver private jet waited for me on the runway at the Maplewood Airport. Great Aunt Grace had officially invited me to Tokyo. I flew across the world in absolute luxury, staring out the oval window at the endless blue ocean, feeling a sense of pure, untouchable freedom. When I finally arrived, the Tokyo skyline was breathtaking, a glittering, glowing forest of neon lights and towering glass buildings. Grace's headquarters was a 70-story high-tech fortress that looked like a sleek spaceship pulled straight from the future. Grace was waiting for me in her private, traditional indoor garden at the very top of the skyscraper. The air smelled beautifully of blooming cherry blossoms, fresh green tea, and wet river stones. She looked exactly like she did on the video screen, sharp, incredibly elegant, and carrying an aura of total power. When she saw me, she didn't just offer a polite handshake. She pulled me into a fierce, surprisingly warm hug. "Welcome home, Abigail," she whispered, her voice thick with genuine emotion. That afternoon, Grace called a massive, formal board meeting with hundreds of her top global executives. She stood at the head of a gigantic frosted glass table and officially named me the sole heir and CEO of Grace Tech and Architecture. She handed me a heavy, solid gold fountain pen. "You survived the earthquake," she told the massive crowd, looking right into my eyes. "And now, she will design and build our future. But the past always tries to drag you backward one last time." A week after I returned to my office in Maplewood, my private desk phone rang. The caller ID flashed in bright red letters. "Federal Correctional Facility." I stared at it for a long, silent minute. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just felt a cold sense of finality. I picked up the receiver. "Abigail?" Madeline's voice was thin, scratchy, and incredibly pathetic. She sounded like a terrified little girl who had lost her favorite toy. "Abigail, please don't hang up. They are treating me horribly in here. The food tastes like cardboard. I have no makeup, no phone. My public defender is a total idiot. Please, I saw on the news that you have so much money now. Please hire me a real, expensive lawyer. I'm your big sister. We are family." I listened to her beg, the loud, chaotic shouting of other prisoners echoing in the background behind her. I pictured her in a scratchy, ugly orange jumpsuit, sitting in a cold, concrete room. She had tried to sell my life's work to a dark web criminal. She had faked my death to steal my savings. She had left me in a terrifying charity clinic to rot. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I leaned back comfortably in my soft leather chair, looking out the massive window over the beautiful city I was helping to rebuild. I leaned into the phone and whispered the 4 cold words that would finally end her story forever. "But I am dead." I heard a sharp, panicked gasp, followed immediately by the heavy plastic clatter of the prison phone dropping to the floor. Madeline had collapsed in total despair. She finally realized that the bridge she burned was the only one that could have ever saved her. I hung up the phone and blocked the prison's number permanently. On a sunny Sunday morning in June, Derek drove me out to Golden Leaf Cemetery. I brought a beautiful, massive bouquet of white lilies, Grandma Florence's absolute favorite. The gray headstone was simple and peaceful. "Florence Ellen Sutton, beloved mother and grandmother." I didn't stay sitting in my wheelchair. Derek gently held my arm as I slowly, painfully stood up. I walked the 3 steps to her grave on my own. I set the beautiful flowers down on the green grass, the warm summer wind brushing gently against my face. "I listened to you, Grandma," I said softly, my voice filled with a deep, unbreakable peace. "I didn't let Madeline's shadows cover my light. I built something that will actually last." The wind rustled the green leaves of the giant old oak tree above us, sounding like a quiet, approving whisper. I didn't feel angry anymore. The toxic, greedy people were completely gone from my life. I wasn't just surviving, I was finally thriving. So that is my true story. I woke up paralyzed and alone, discarded like garbage by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. But I discovered the hard way that true family isn't about the blood in your veins. It's about the people who stand fiercely by your hospital bed, the people who fight your battles in dark, dusty server rooms, and the people who send you the exact tools you need to save yourself. If you are out there feeling broken and betrayed by the people you love, remember this. Your story doesn't end when someone else turns off the lights. You just have to build your own fire. Sometimes the most painful betrayals create the most beautiful comebacks. If Abigail's journey, from a freezing, forgotten charity bed to standing on top of the world, made you feel something real today, tap that like button to honor her absolute resilience. Stories this raw and truthful remind us that no matter how dark it gets, the villains don't always get the final word. If you want to hear more intense, real stories about people who refuse to stay broken, hit subscribe and join our community. We don't abandon our own here. Drop a fire emoji Laya in the comments if you are ready to build your own empire, and I will see you in the next video.